Hi there. This is a video response to my last video, which was a bit of a clumsy discussion about whether Gnosticism could tolerate sacred objects and sacred regalia and churches and sacred spaces generally. And I don't know about tolerate. I should imagine Gnosticism would sort of tolerate just about anything really that didn't frighten the horses or worry the man on the Clapham omnibus. Tolerance being a big hallmark of Gnosticism really throughout the centuries. It's the people that have been against Gnosticism that have been somewhat intolerant, or actually very intolerant in some cases. But I think here, Tibetan Buddhism actually comes to the rescue, and it provides a somewhat non-dualistic resolution to the question of, whether objects can be imbued with sacred power or something. I remember when the Buddhists came to my school right back in 1973, and they had this beautiful statue of the Buddha when they came into the classroom, and they set this Buddha up, much to the anger, actually, of some of the Christian fundamentalist school children that were there. But then they smiled and they said, "This is actually this statue means nothing. It's just something to focus your mind on, and to remind yourself of the founder of Buddhism. And it's kind of a peaceful image, and it's a human image of a human being sitting in his peaceful yoga posture, meditating with his eyes closed. And it's supposed to inspire. It's supposed to be, as I say, a focal point for contemplation and meditation, and that's all it means. And in fact, the idea, as far as I understand Tibetan Buddhism, is this thing about form and emptiness. You see, here is a form, okay, and here is the inside, the interior, and here is the exterior. And as far as I understand it, this could be a form in any dimension, on any realm. So obviously it could be a material form. It could be a cup or a plate or something like that. And it could be a cup and a plate on the astral, on any etheric level, basically. It could be an image, it could be a sensation, it could be an experience, it could be anything, literally any form, anything, any dream image or anything like that. But the big characteristic about every form is that it's actually empty. So there's an empty space. It's empty of dharma, or empty of teaching, empty of righteousness, empty of significance, empty of value, empty of magical power, although magical power is itself empty. So it has no, how can I put this? Well, emptiness can be defined as something to do with value. It's something to do with something that you might use, utility. It has no utility. So no form actually has any ultimate utility. Certainly significance would come into it. So there's a sort of emptiness, there's an empty space, because Dharma itself is without. So in this space, in this white space here, all around the form, that's where reality really is. But inside the form, there is no reality. So, but that's why form, all forms, material forms, etheric, astral forms, etheric forms, dream images, or a whole lot of the whole kit and caboodle, is illusion. So the thing about a form, although it's, if you bumped into this form, if you were there and you knocked into this form, you might stub your toe. But everything, including your toe, of course, is illusory. That's because everything, including your toe, including the object that you banged your toe against, has no form, has no reality inside it. And indeed, in Kabbalah, we talk about the Qipot, which are the demonic forms or demonic realms, and they're called shells. So, as the name implies, a shell has nothing inside it. It's an empty husk of a form, literally nothing inside it, because, of course, it's a sort of contradictory situation that even though every form is empty, in the Gnostic terms, everything, well, every sentient being, every conscious being, has a spirit spark soul inside it. But otherwise, it's entirely empty. So there's a little kernel, perhaps, in all conscious beings on this earth. There is a little kernel which I've probably drawn here, and this is the soul in the center, and that corresponds to the reality that's outside the empty form. And then here's a whole lot of emptiness. So really, this is too big. This would be a tiny little, like an atom inside a whole bunch of electrons. A tiny, tiny little atom inside what is really mostly empty space. And so, indeed, in the sort of philosophical Buddhist kind of way, we have the form itself, and then we have emptiness, and then within conscious form, a conscious being, we have this little soul spark. But in everything else that doesn't have consciousness, which according to Theosophists is not actually very much, because even a stone, even a crystal has consciousness. So it gets a bit more sort of complicated as we go from Buddhism to Theosophy, but never mind. And we mustn't mix too many of the systems of thought here, otherwise we're going to get terribly confused. I'm already confused, actually. Anyway, so basically, you can have any form. It can be a beautiful form. It can be an ugly form. It doesn't really matter what the form is, but every form is empty of dharma, empty of utility, significance, empty of value. So I suppose nothing actually, sort of look at it in nihilistic terms, nothing material or nothing astral, for example, has any value to it. It's empty of value, it's empty of reality, because it is all pertains to illusion. Because the lower worlds, or the finite worlds, are illusory worlds as well as being finite. So everything, the white space out here is where reality is, or if I can say reality is, because there is no God. I mean, God has no location exactly, whereas objects, illusory objects, have location, space and time. But of course, space and time is also illusory. It's also an empty form as well. It all gets a bit sort of confusing, really. And maybe that's part of the romantic charm of it, is it's so confusing that you can't get your head around this idea of emptiness and form. I mean, if you think about it too long, your brain sort of becomes a bit fuzzy, becomes a bit mushy, which perhaps is a kind of Zen idea behind it, is that think about emptiness and form for too long, your brain actually sort of has a kind of transcendental moment, as it were, as it tries to figure out this strange contradiction, which is emptiness and form. Complicated more, of course, by saying, well, there may be a little bit of reality in the soul center of formlessness, or non-significance, or emptiness. So within the emptiness of every form, there is this little spark of soul which corresponds to the reality outside of form. Yeah, I mean, I like that. I suppose I like that. I think that picture is clear enough, and I'm not sure really. Anyway, the point is that you can have a Michelangelo painting, and you can say that's a beautiful painting, but actually it has no reality. It has no spiritual reality to it. So really, it doesn't have to be in the Sistine Chapel. It could be anywhere. Basically, it could be in your front room. It could be in your garden. It could be in a public park, it could be in a museum, it could be in an art gallery. And everybody could see it, and well, everybody does see it because everyone goes to, well, people that go to Vatican City see it, obviously, and the rest of us see it through some sort of medium. But so we all experience it, but the reality that it depicts is not in the depiction. That's what I'm really saying. And what is actually depicted is nothing. So there's no magical power. So if you're looking for for magic and I don't know goetic demons and quixotic demons and a sort of Faustius kind of universe where things are bumping around at night, and that's all Harry Potter stuff, really. That's all Buffy and the Vampire Slayer or Angel. It's twaddle, really. Well, it is twaddle, apart from the fact that you can perceive anything if you are in trance and you ascend to some astral level. But everything on the astral level is empty as well. So things have form, but they are empty of ultimate reality. So everything outside the astral plane, if this is the astral plane, that's all empty inside, and everything outside is the reality, the substratum reality. You see. So don't really look for ultimate reality in anything other than ultimate reality. So you really do have to ascend or translocate from the emptiness of all forms to a formlessness wherein you can find the absolute reality, which I can't obviously draw because immediately I draw it, it'd become another form, wouldn't it? So it's kind of hard, I suppose, to see how one might actually have perception of formlessness, because surely your consciousness, which might be here, would also have a form and therefore be empty. So it's like whatever whatever draws a limit or draws whatever delimits a space is empty inside, even though it has form. So I'm sure how a form consciousness could actually detect formlessness, and therefore how can it detect ultimate reality? But I suppose I'm getting a little bit philosophical here because really that's where perhaps where intuition and emotion comes in, because perhaps intuition and emotion, perhaps they do penetrate the veil, perhaps they are able to detect formlessness and ultimate reality, even though they do have form, and they do have form, and they are empty inside. So it's possible for something, it's possible for something which has the potential to have form and emptiness, can detect something which is formless and has ultimate reality, which is why we depend upon intuition, gnosis, and inner knowing, which we depend on that in order to rise above the finite worlds, the material worlds, in order to detect or experience in some way that which is actually potentially impossible to experience or detect. You see. But certainly, as far as sacred objects are concerned, you could have a million of them. You could have a temple made of gold. You could have vestments and regalia, and you could have pictures on the wall. You could have beautiful calf skin books everywhere. You could either have all these things materially, or you could imagine all these things using your imagination, or you could dream of all these things in a spontaneous dream, a lucid dream that might have. And all these forms, all these objects, be they material or astral, would all be empty of reality and empty of significance, and not worth your time contemplating too much, because the ultimate reality is formless. The ultimate reality cannot be bounded. You can't draw you can't build a wall around ultimate reality. You can't draw, as soon as I do that, I have emptiness inside here, and I have ultimate reality here. And no matter how much how much I could, I could draw this infinitely big, or a size approaching infinity, and it still would be empty inside, and outside would be the ultimate reality, and my consciousness would be here in this form, which is empty, because my consciousness is empty as well, because it has form, and it wouldn't be able to detect. But we think that somehow there is a bridge, there is something which can detect formlessness and ultimate reality, and that's probably something to do with intuition, emotion, contemplation, and perhaps even some kind of, I don't know, touching of some physical object, I suppose. Um, but even then, you might touch a physical object, but still you can't give it much or any significance, really. And maybe if you could pick up an object, and think this has no significance, because it's empty, it's a form that's empty, maybe that contemplation of emptiness and form actually might propel your consciousness to formlessness and ultimate reality, perhaps. I just put that out there as a sort of hypothesis, really. So I don't know whether this video has actually explained anything better, really. I think possibly we've got ourselves in an even more greater, deeper quagmire than we were before, really. But then maybe that's the idea, and all will become clear eventually.